42 days, 32 flat tires, 3,500 miles. Today was it. I have 80 miles left to get to the Atlantic Ocean. My day started off with just full of excitement. Although I had the tired legs, I was sunburned, all of those physical things was definitely very apparent. A sore butt from sitting on a saddle for so long, but there was nothing that was going to get in my way at this point. 80 miles was super attainable, and I was ready to see my kids. I was ready to see my family, but I couldn't wait to pick my kids up and give them the biggest hug. I was excited. And so I started. It was fortunately the most beautiful day. The sun was shining. I got a great start early in the morning. It was fresh. It was cool. And being mid-July, I knew that I was going to be, dealing with the heat of the day, but it was no different than what I had already faced. And so I was ready. I was so excited. So I get going. I get out of my tent. I pack it up. I pack up my bicycle trailer. I'm ready. And as I'm riding, definitely the reflection of what has happened even over the last 41 days. But all I could think about was getting to that coast. My family had reached out and they were like, Michael, what do you want? What do you want when you get there? And I told them, I want the coldest glass of Blue Moon with an orange slice. And they're like, okay, done. We're going to do it. And I would think about that, but I couldn't help but to think about my dad being there and seeing him and giving him a hug. I was ready. And so mile after mile went by, and it was just the building of what's about to happen and the finishing of this major endeavor. And so as I got closer, I'm roughly 30 miles or so into or 30 miles away from the beach. And my sister calls me and I pick up the phone. I pull over and I pick up the phone and I'm like, hey, what's up? And she's like, hey, is there any way that I'm coming into this small little bitty town? She said, is there any way you could stop at this McDonald's? There's somebody there that would like to meet you. And so I did. I go to this McDonald's and there's an older friend of the family. I didn't really know him very well. They had their kids with them. I think they had 4 or 5 kids. And those kids were excited to see me and the interested in the story and interested in what had just happened. And so as I am in McDonald's, all I could think about was being in the air conditioning. This whole trip starting in the beginning of June and going all the way into mid-July, every day was brutal with heat. And I would look forward to going into restaurants or any sort of location that had air conditioning. And so this was like every time else. I would go into McDonald's. The air conditioning felt amazing. I went and I ordered me an ice cream to just cool my body down. I would sit down and this family is gathered around. They're asking me questions. And as I'm eating the ice cream, one of these little boys asked me, so did you do this whole trip without eating? And I was like, no, I ate breakfast and I ate dinner and every morning, just not realizing what truly happened. Well, did you ever sleep? Did you go 42 days without sleeping? No, I slept as well. But it was fun just to hear their questions and their comments. And as I was leaving McDonald's, I said goodbye to this family. There was another family that had overheard what I had done. And this lady comes up to me and she goes, can you talk to my son? She hands the phone to me and I start talking to this stranger's son, telling him about what I did. And he was asking me a bunch of questions, but all I could think about was my kids. I was ready to see my kids. I was able to get back on the bike, get back pedaling. And I knew that I had 2 or 3 miles to be able to see my kids. My kids were staying at my sister's house at the time, and her house was en route to the beach. I had about 25 miles to go. And as I'm coming around the corner, I knew any minute now I would see my kids. They had told me they were going to be waiting out on the side of the road. And I round this corner, and there they are. Here's my kids. And, I would just seeing them, they made some signs and excited for their dad. And I pull over and I couldn't even get off of my bike yet. They were crawling over me, just both of them in my hands, pull them up to me and give them the biggest hug. And to them, I was just their hero. I was the dad that just went on a little bike ride. I don't even think they could understand the concept of what I had just accomplished. And it wasn't even important to me. I just wanted them in my arms. And so after spending about 30 minutes with them, talking with them, loving on them, spending a little bit of time with them, answering their questions, them showing me what they drew on the signs and their excitement about what they had made for me, it was time to get back on the road. And as much as I hated letting them say goodbye to me, it was only for a short time. They were going to get loaded up in the cars and start heading to the beach. And so I get back started, and I have about 10 miles or so to go to the town that my dad lived in. And we decided to have a little rendezvous point at a parking lot of a church where he could meet me there. And so I was looking forward to seeing him. And mile after mile went by. I'm ready to see him, but also I'm ready to get to the coast. And I pull up in this parking lot, and there is a crowd of people that I didn't anticipate. And they're there, and I pull in, and there's my dad. And, just going up to him and just giving the biggest hug. I didn't know that my sister was going to be there as well. That was a surprise. She brought in her family and her kids. And so giving everybody just big hugs and spending some time with them. And, that time with my dad was just, it was amazing. All of those days of just him being a part of this, him intrigued in what I was doing, him asking questions. He would send me care packages of candy bars and equipment and bicycle tires and chains and things that I would ask of him. He would send it to post offices that I would ride by, and I would go in and they would hold it for me and I would get these things. He was just a part of that whole journey. But even bigger than that, it was part of the journey of just this restoration in our relationship, this rebuilding of this respect that we had for each other that we had not previously had. And so all of those emotions were just billowing up inside of me. And so seeing him and seeing his excitement, seeing how proud he was of me, it just spoke volumes to me. But I had one thing on my mind still. I had to get to the coast. And where I decided to go to was on the military base where I was born, at the beach there. And I had to go through the gate where all the military you had to get permission to go through the gate, as well as the military base, and they wanted to know why and what you were doing and all of that. And being that my dad was a retired Marine, I was able to go in based on his permission. And so I got the pass to be able to get onto the military base, and I kept going forward. And at this point, my dad was driving the truck, and he would at times follow me. He would at times be ahead of me and pull over and wait for me to catch up. And just this constant little leapfrogging with him in his truck as we're going this last 10 or so miles. And he would roll down his window every now and then, and he'd pull up next to me, and he'd just ask me, "How are you doing? Do you need anything?" And it was just nice just to know that he cared. It was nice to know that he was thinking about me and he was concerned. And also it was nice knowing that he was excited for me. I make my last turn onto about a 4-mile road. It was a long straightaway. And this straightaway I could just about see the beach from this long straightaway. But as I turned onto this road, there was one thing I forgot over the last 25 or so miles. I forgot to eat. I forgot to refuel my body, and every pedal stroke, every mile that would go by, I was burning calories. I was averaging about 10,000 calories burned every day. And I had to constantly be refueling my body. I had to constantly be eating. There were times in the trip I would go to Subway and I would go and get 2, sometimes 3 footlongs, cut them in thirds, wrap them up, put them in my pockets, and eat them about once an hour. But I forgot. I forgot to get me any food. And just like I'm sure every one of you have experienced low blood sugar where you get a little bit of the shakes or something, I started to experience that. And my dad noticed it. And he pulls up next to me, actually pulls over on the side of the road, and he rolls his window down. And as I approach, he's like, "What's up? What's going on?" And I said, "I got to have something to eat. I'm shaking. I've got to refuel." And he happened to have a candy bar. And he hands me this candy bar, and I peel it open as fast as I could, and I start eating this thing. And it was enough to just refuel and give me enough energy. And so I got back going, and within seconds, my final flat tire. This was flat tire number 32. My flat tires I kept repairing over and over and over again with little tire patches. And so these inner tubes looked like they had been in a fight with a shotgun. There was holes all in them. But I didn't want to change it. I decided to ride this last 3 or 4 miles on a flat tire. And so I kept riding. And the closer I got, the more I could see that horizon line of the Atlantic Ocean and the beautiful blue skies. I could see it. It started to just show itself the closer and closer I got. I was there. It's like right there. And my dad, as he's following really close to me, sometimes he's right in front, sometimes he's right behind me. And we get to a bridge. And there in the coast of North Carolina, you have the intercoastal waterways. So you got this little, almost like a river, but there was a drawbridge that crossed over the intercoastal. And as soon as you cross over, you're like at the beach. It was right there. I could see the sand. But just off to my side was a sailboat. And this sailboat is coming up to this drawbridge. And sure enough, the drawbridge is like the bars go down. The drawbridge starts to come up right before I got to it. I had to stop. And this gave me an opportunity to just take a little breather. I pulled out my bicycle pump out of my little trailer. I pumped up the tire so I could at least just get over. At this point, it was flat, completely flat. And so I pumped it up to just give me that little extra air to just get over the bridge. But as I watched that sailboat just go right through, just super slow, just as it crossed through where that bridge was, what it reminded me of was the drawbridge reminded me of the closure of one part of my life. The sailboat reminded me, it honestly reminded me of my mom. And although my mom at this point she had passed away 7 years prior, with her love for lighthouses and the beach, that sailboat reminded me of her, of Michael, stop, pause for a second, and do this with your dad. Cross over this bridge together. And so the reflecting of the healing that had taken place over the last 42 days, this was like it all funneling down to a moment where I get to go almost hand in hand with my dad and cross this bridge that had this final moment with him together. And so as the sailboat went under the bridge and started to get outside of what I could see, it was as if the sailboat just represented, like, that was the old path. That was like, now we're doing something new. It was the drifting away of the old. And the drawbridge as it closed was the representing of the new path. And so as it closed and I am starting crossing over this bridge, I look over at my dad and I'm going, let's do this together. Let's cross together. And so we crossed over together into a crowd of people, excited and cheering, and signs up of welcoming me home. And it was exciting. I was excited. I couldn't wait to dip my bicycle into the Atlantic Ocean. I was ready. I had my first grade teacher there. I had my friends, my family. Everybody showed up to celebrate with me. A lot of my nieces and nephews were really young. They were all under the age. The majority of them were all under the age of 10 or so. And they wanted to go for a ride on my bicycle. I haven't even made it to the water's edge yet. And so I took all of the gear out of my bicycle trailer and I set it on the side. And granted, don't forget, I still have a flat tire. The pumping up right before the drawbridge closed helped me get across, but it didn't help for long. 2 by 2, I would stick these little kids in this bicycle trailer, and I'd ride up the road, and I'd turn around, and I'd ride back, and then I'd put 2 more kids in, and I'd ride up the road and ride back. Regardless of my own emotions and my own drive of wanting to get to the water's edge, I spent a little bit of time with all these kids and gave them a little bit of enjoyment by riding in this little bicycle trailer and me pulling them. After 30 or so minutes of doing this, I unhooked the bicycle trailer and I walked my bicycle down to the water's edge. And dipped those tires in that water and looked over this horizon of the Atlantic. And now it was like, I did it. I accomplished this huge endeavor. But now, as wide as I can see the waters and as deep as I could see beyond, that was what was ahead of me. This was the new chapter. This was the new of everything. And I just stayed there with my feet wet. My tires are in a couple inches of water. I'm leaning over the bicycle, just taking it all in. The smell of the salt, the sand, feeling it under my toes, the waves just coming in and hitting my bicycle and hitting my shins. It was like no other feeling. I didn't really know what the next steps were, but I knew that this was the start of something big. 42 days, 32 flat tires, broken ribs, a car crash, setting a tent on fire, 3,500 miles. But this was the start of something new. This was the start of something bigger than what I could ever imagine. So I have a question for you. As I've gone through these 10 episodes of all of this bike ride across the United States, and you've been on this journey with me as I've shared my story, I'm curious to know, what is your bike ride across the country? What is that thing for you that is your big endeavor? What is that thing for you that is bigger than what you can imagine? But you make that attempt and then you go down that journey. And so I leave you with this. I leave you with questioning yourself, what are you going to put in place in your life to create that bike ride? And as you're doing that, and when you determine to do that, I want to leave you with a couple words that I've been saying all along. As you do it, remember to just keep pedaling. Every day, you wake up and you get up. Doesn't matter if it's 5 miles today, 30 miles today, 100 miles today. Just remember to just keep pedaling. Thank you.